Hey guys, what's up? So we have with the introduction of the new master rule system, we've had a little bit of a Q&A. This is for the OCG, so some of the rules might translate a little bit differently, or we kind of have to wait on these rules, but at least it gives us a little bit of an indication of what Konami is looking for. As has been previously mentioned, the rules come into place as of the 1st of April 2020. These are for Master Rule 5. The changes for the current rules include the Fusion, Synchro, and Xyz monsters that are face down in the extra deck can also be special summoned to your main monster zones as well as the extra monster zone. When Fusion, Synchro, or Xyz monsters are special summoned from the extra deck, in addition to being special summoned in an extra monster zone, you are able to put them in the main monster zones. You can choose in which zone to place them according to your duel strategy. So you have a little bit more flexibility. I know most cards don't really care about where they get placed, unless you've got specific link monsters with certain effects that trigger if you've got a card, or sometimes they create protection if they're like co-linked. The only kind of strategy I remember of the opponent being able to kind of abuse two cards in a column tend to be the Mech Knights, and you don't really see them like floating around that often. They're here and there, but they're just not really expanded upon. There's only about 6 or 7 of them, and I mean they're decent, but just at the moment they're not that great. And with this Master Rule, I can see them actually becoming a bit weaker. However, with Pendulum monsters and Link monsters, they have to be special summoned in the same way as Master Rule 4. So for summoning them, they have to go straight into the extra monster zone, or in the case that you already have a Link monster, in a place with the Link arrow attached. I think this is quite a good idea because it avoids this whole issue with the Pendulum monsters being able to kind of constantly like be destroyed and come back so long as you have the pendulum scales. So it creates a level of fairness. It prevents us going back to like when we actually had Master Rule 3 and like pendulum monsters were just too much. So I remember all the Performer pals, people were constantly complaining about Monkey Board and just constant searching, constantly just mass spamming the board, and your opponent either really couldn't do anything about it, so they ended up just using up their resources and just ended up kind of almost quitting the games. So as for the Q&A, the first question: if Fusion, Synchro, or Extra Monster, Xyz monster is special summoned from the extra deck, must the first monster be special summoned in the extra monster zone? In that case, it is not necessary to special summon the first monster in the extra monster zone. You can place it in either the extra monster zone or the main monster zone. Second question: while special summoning a Fusion, Synchro, or Xyz monster from the extra deck, can a single player use 2 extra monster zones? The rule for a single player using only 1 extra monster zone each remains unchanged. A single player can use 2 extra monster zones only in the case in which they complete the extra link by co-linking their link monsters. Now for this, I think this is quite fair, because otherwise you could kind of lock your opponent out of certain cards, and with the number of negations in the game as it is, you know, it already is a bit one-sided unless you can afford the particular cards. Next question is: if you have a non-link monster in your extra monster zone, can you special summon a Fusion, Synchro, or Xyz monster from the extra deck? Even if you're already using an extra monster zone, you can special summon the said monsters to the main monster zones. Some of these questions are just rewords of the same thing, really. If the opponent is using both extra monster zones by using an extra link, can you special summon a new Fusion, Synchro, or Xyz? Same answer, they can also go back to the main monster zones. If a Fusion, Synchro, or Xyz monster is special summoned from the extra deck by a method other than a Fusion summon, Synchro summon, or Xyz summon, such as the effects of Cyberstein or Starlight Road, in which zone are they placed? In this case, they can either be the extra monster zone or your main monster zone. This is quite effective because you're not kind of restricted to where you can put them. and so you have a little bit more flexibility in those few players that are using like Mech Knights, for example. If a fusion synchro exceeds pendulum or link monster, it's special summoned from the deck, extra deck ignoring its summoning conditions in which zone is placed. Even in that case, the zone is chosen according to the type of those monsters. So the fusion synchro exceeds can be an extra deck in the extra monster zone or main monster zone, and the pendulum and links have to be kind of stuck in the extra monster zone. And lastly, if a fusion pendulum, synchro pendulum, or exceeds pendulum monster is special summoned from the extra deck, in which zone is it placed? So the zone is chosen depending on whether it was face up or face down in the extra deck. If those monsters are face down in the extra deck, they can be special summoned in either zone. If those monsters are face up in the extra deck, they can be special summoned into the extra monster zone. So this is actually quite a crucial point. You do have a couple of monsters that are a combination of both a pendulum and an extra deck different extra deck monster. So what it's saying here is that if you've got it face down, so it's not been summoned, it's not been dealt with, nothing has happened with it, you've not used it in the duel, it's treated as though it's the other monster other than pendulum. So for example, in the fusion pendulum, it would be treated as the fusion monster. In the synchro pendulum, it is the synchro monster. If it's the exceeds pendulum, it is the exceeds monster. However, if it's face up, then it has been treated as a pendulum beforehand, and is going to be treated the same as a pendulum. I hope this clarifies everything you need to know, at least for the time being, regarding the new system. What do you think of these new rulings? Does this make sense to you? Have you got any confusion? If so, you can always comment down below and I'll see if I can try and respond back. Like the video if you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.